Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And you know what? It's that time of the month again where we get new Xbox Game Pass games. This is something I always enjoy, is they consistently put out great games on a monthly basis, and the first half of March is already set, and depending on what type of games you like, you might really enjoy the first half of March. They do seem to be focusing on a very specific group here, and if you are a part of that group, you're going to love what they have in store. And we'll talk all about that later in the video. Also, PlayStation is doing some strange but intriguing things with PlayStation VR. Yeah, if some of their upcoming ideas comes to fruition, you might actually be able to play games using a banana. And no, I'm not joking about this at all, and I'll explain why here in just a bit. First though, before we get started today with all of the news, I just wanted to say happy 4th birthday to the Nintendo Switch and Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the best launch combinations of all time. The Switch has been an amazing console so far, and it's still bringing tons of great games to fans across the world. We got some Pokemon games to look forward to this year, Monster Hunter Rise releases later this month, and I expect some more Zelda games to be announced throughout the year. Again, it's been such a fantastic console, and brought Nintendo back to life in many ways after the Wii U struggled for years. But happy birthday to the Switch, and in the comments below, let me know what your favorite Switch game has been so far. And actually, speaking of the Switch, let's start off with some Nintendo news. Bravely Default 2 released last week, and this is a great game for fans of old school JRPGs. Fans of the genre seem to be absolutely loving this game so far. Fan reaction definitely seems to contrast with critic reviews for Bravely Default 2, which really isn't surprising for me when it comes to this particular game. I was kind of expecting fans to enjoy this game much more. What's interesting, however, is that Bravely Default 2 appears to be having a lot of success over in Japan, where it's selling out at major retailers such as Amazon. This is a great sign for both Square Enix and Nintendo. If they once again have a lot of success with Bravely Default 2, they could end up continuing on with this franchise, which is a breath of fresh air for fans of classic JRPGs. Not everybody has been thrilled with Final Fantasy becoming more of an action series throughout the years, and Bravely Default 2 is essentially Square Enix giving those particular fans something to enjoy as well. I mean, Bravely Default 2 basically is Final Fantasy and was originally planned to be a spin-off. So this is great news to see Bravely Default 2 have some success. Hopefully that continues, and I'm just going to say it, if you haven't played this game already, and if you like old school JRPGs, this is a must-play game. Definitely go check it out. Next up, we gotta talk about Valheim once again. We have talked about this game several times in the last few weeks for its success, and guess what? They sold another million units. Yeah, that's right. This now brings Valheim up to 5 million units sold since February 2nd when it released, and that truly is insane for a game like this. You know, this is an early access survival game without much marketing, and it's kind of taking over Steam right now. It's consistently in the top played games over on Steam, and it's been a top seller for the entirety of February, and continues on with that in March. I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon either. When all said and done, this will be one of the best-selling games of 2022, and we are looking at the next big surprise hit. Fans do seem to love this game. This isn't just a game that's selling well, but rather, people are thoroughly enjoying this game. It currently has 121,000 reviews on Steam, and 96% of those recommend Valheim. That is very telling on how good this game truly is. You don't usually see things like that, especially with an early access game, but once again, big congrats to the developers over at Iron Gate. And if you have missed out on this game, go check it out on Steam. Now, we also have some PlayStation VR games to talk about today. I mean, we still don't have PlayStation VR 2.0 yet, but that doesn't mean that they're going to slow down for current releases, and there are some interesting games here, so let's check it out. You have Song in the Smoke, Fract, I Expect You to Die 2, Zenith, After the Fall, and for the big one, Doom 3 VR releasing on March 29th. There has been a lot of discussion on whether or not Bethesda games will still come over to PlayStation, but before that acquisition is completed, they did go ahead and officially announce Doom 3 for PlayStation VR. As a fan of VR myself, this is a pretty cool release. We have seen Bethesda support virtual reality in the past with games like Skyrim, which is a great VR experience by the way, so I would expect Doom to be yet another fun experience in VR. Now, some of these other games do look interesting though. Song in the Smoke as an example looks like an immersive survival game. That one might be worth checking out, but I will leave a link below for you to watch all 6 trailers for each game. Here's something really strange though. A new PlayStation patent was spotted online, and this might be one of the more odd patents that I've seen so far. PlayStation is apparently considering the idea of playing games with none other than a banana. Yeah, this is a thing, but this is actually a lot more interesting than what it first appears. While the picture does show a banana with overlaid buttons on it, you could use other objects in your house as a controller. So what's happening here is that Sony is looking to use inexpensive objects in your house as a controller while you're using PlayStation VR. You could use practically anything in your house, and then Sony would map buttons onto said object. I imagine whatever you're holding in your hand would be detected through the PlayStation VR camera and then brought into the game where it could then overlay virtual buttons. If you wanted to use a book as an example, as long as PlayStation could detect you using that as a controller, theoretically it could end up happening. Now, I don't know how well this would work per se, but this is interesting to say the least. I mean, if your controller is broke, or if you couldn't afford a new one, this could be a temporary option. There's also local multiplayer games where if you don't have a second controller, you could do something like this and still be able to play with a friend. It does sound like Sony has some ambitious plans for PSVR 2.0 though. Now, it's important to keep in mind that patents don't always amount to anything, but from what I've seen and even heard, we should see a big upgrade with PlayStation VR 2.0 when it eventually is revealed. Their new controllers will more than likely have adaptive triggers similar to the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller, which would be an amazing feature for immersion. That's something that VR excels at, and with adaptive triggers, they can be an added layer of immersion. It's also a big step up from PlayStation Move controllers, which worked okay for what they were, but was never really originally designed for PSVR. Sony's also saying that you will only have one cord to plug into your PS5, and as we've seen with pretty much every modern VR headset, the cameras will more than likely be on the headset itself rather than having an external camera plugged into your PlayStation. All of this sounds very exciting on paper, but let me know what you think of this latest patent. Would you like to try to play a game with nothing more than a banana? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on, it's the beginning of March, which means we got new Xbox Game Pass games to talk about. They typically reveal each month in waves, with the first being the first couple weeks of the month. And for this month, you're either going to love this month or you're going to hate it. This first wave is very focused on sports fans in particular. Now, these are very popular games, so let's check out what they have in store. You have NBA 2K21, Star Wars Squadrons, NHL 21, Madden 21, and Football Manager 2021. So there are a lot of sports games here, and if you do like sports a lot, this is a fantastic lineup of games, with some relatively newer releases. I am a big fan of NFL and NBA myself, so I might check these games out. I do love playing basketball, but I haven't really played an NBA game in a long time, and one thing about NBA 2K21 is visually it looks amazing on the Xbox Series X. It's probably the most realistic looking game out right now for consoles. The thing is, they're not exactly being very clear if this release is the next generation version or not. From all of the videos they've been showing, it does appear to be the next generation version, but I'm not 100% positive on that. We do know it comes to Xbox Game Pass tomorrow on March 4th though, so we'll for sure find out then. Hopefully it will be the Xbox Series X version. If you're not a sports fan though, there is Star Wars Squadrons, which released not all that long ago. This was another really good Star Wars game by Electronic Arts. I know they've been criticized for how they've handled the Star Wars IP, rightfully so, but they have released a few good games in the last couple years. You do have Star Wars Squadrons that released last year, and then you also have Jedi Fallen Order. Ironically, both of these games are available on Xbox Game Pass. I mean, if you are a Star Wars fan though, go check out Xbox Game Pass. They do have several Star Wars games. Like I said though, the first half of the month for Xbox Game Pass is really going to be a love it or hate it type of lineup, depending on if you like sports or Star Wars. I think for Squadrons alone though, that does make this a solid lineup of games. It's a nice high quality release, and even if you don't like Star Wars, it's a good game and you might want to at least give it a try. Keep in mind though, we'll get more games in the second half of March, and as always, I will keep you up to date on that. I am a big fan of Xbox Game Pass, and I look forward to all of these new games just as much as you do. Now before we go, we do have one last Nintendo related topic to talk about, and that's for Mario 3D All-Stars. Nintendo has unfortunately reiterated that Mario 3D All-Stars and Mario Bros. 35 will end production on March 31st. As much as I love Nintendo and their products, I really don't like this decision by Nintendo. They certainly do weird things from time to time, but this one is just a big no for me. I mean, if they wanted to stop production of the physical version of Mario 3D All-Stars, okay, that's one thing. But to no longer have these games on the Nintendo eShop is such a shame. They kind of explain it as being a celebration for Mario, and that's why these were limited releases, but they work on the Switch, so why take them down? The Switch is still selling phenomenally well, and people would still continue to buy this game if it were readily available. Unfortunately though, if you do want Mario 3D World, you need to pick that game up before the end of the month. Even if you don't have a Switch and you plan on getting a Switch in the future, you might want to get this game. As for Mario Bros. 35, that will sadly just be gone. Please though, do not make this a trend, Nintendo. I have a feeling we're going to see something similar with Zelda this year, and sure, I'll buy it and everything, but I feel bad for those who don't have a Switch yet, and then, maybe a year out from now, these games are just gone. That's what I hate to see personally. On to our final topic though, the poll of the day. The Last of Us Part 2 has been running away with the Game of the Year awards for 2020. In fact, it has become the most award-winning game of all time, and it just continues to get more and more awards. We talked about this yesterday as The Last of Us Part 2 broke a new record for the most BAFTA nominations, but if you look online, the community seems very split on this game. That's a direct correlation with the story and how it was told, so we've heard from the critics, and now I wanted to hear from you, the community. Do you think The Last of Us Part 2 deserves to be the most award-winning game of all time, and you all voted no, and this wasn't even close. Several of you mentioned the story and being disappointed about what happened between the characters. And for me, as I've said before, truthfully, I would say the first game was overall better in my opinion. I think the first was a masterpiece, and while yes, we can make that debate that the characters in that game was morally wrong, or specifically with that one decision at the end, but the characters were still very likable, and you can kind of understand why that decision was made. It wasn't necessarily right, but for the second game, not everybody was on board with a newer, controversial decision after loving the original characters so much and taking that journey with them. I could probably talk into length as to exactly why, but to keep it short, there are reasons the second game has split the community. It is a very impressive game from a technological standpoint though. It's one of the most impressive games I've ever seen, but I don't play games simply because they're impressive. I want to enjoy them, and I can honestly say I like the first game more. I won't go so far as to say the second is bad though. I've seen a lot of people love the sequel, and that's awesome. Like I said, I have nothing against this game, but it really just depends on if you like its story and the direction they took it in. I'm trying to talk about this game without going into spoiler territory, but I mean, if you played it, you probably know what I'm talking about. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.